What is up, guys? It is Greg here at the brand new world headquarters of the Vinyl Rundown channel. Thanks for joining us. Today I'm just going to go over a quick set of kind of questionable records that I bought over the summer. We hit probably a dozen or 15 record stores in our travels throughout Southern California. And I got to some record stores that were interesting, some questionable, some terrible. And maybe I need to make a different video about the record stores themselves, but you know, I am a fan of inexpensive records, cheap records, cheapskate. This is the new Vinyl Rundown headquarters, by the way. New office for my Zoom calls, for my business clients, and I'm hoping I can use this for Zoom or making videos or whatever. So you won't see me out in the big vinyl room too much. This is the vinyl overflow room. There's two IKEA stacks in here, 8 cubes over there, 12 cubes over here, some records on the wall, and decent microphone, blah blah blah. Let's see if this works. Let's start with, what should we start with? Would you buy this record for $3? I bought it just because of the cover. Gene Krupa, Jazz at the Philharmonic. It was only $3, but I think it's an original because it's really old and crusty. Gene Krupa, the great bebop and swing era drummer, and Norman Granz, Jazz at the Philharmonic. I bought this because of the cover. David Stone Martin, if you know who that is, he did a lot of the Verve and Clef, and but he has a very distinctive style that's mostly pen, ink pen, but not always. But a cool cover. It says Mercury on it, and just the Philharmonic. I never knew what the Philharmonic was. I figured New York Philharmonic? No, LA Philharmonic Orchestra Hall that they played at from like the 40s to the 60s. So they call it Jazz at the Philharmonic because that was Norman Granz's, the name of his touring shows that he put on. And I guess in those days they were recording live jazz, or at least he was, before he did a lot of before studio was as popular. Gene Krupa on drums, Charlie Ventura on sax, and I don't know who this Napoleon guy is, but you know, a low catalog number, MG C500, a 3-letter catalog number. You know it's an old record. This is a beat record. It does not play acceptable at all. Bought it for the cover. Sometimes I buy records for the cover, and the good news is they play fine. Not. So here's a record I got at a store in Ventura County. Highly recommended by another YouTuber. Let's move over so I can put the records on my right and my head on my left. Does that make sense? Another YouTuber, vinyl community guy, I can't remember who it was, but he did like 10 great, you know, underrated jazz records, and he talked about the Jazz Crusaders, who changed their name to the Crusaders, and people like I want to say Joe Sample and Wilton Felder, that's right, Styx Hooper, Wayne Henderson, and Larry Carlton plays a little bit on here on the solos, but he's not a member of the band. It's like 70s jazz, funk, R&B, but it wasn't as great as I thought, as this other guy made it out. But right after I saw the video, I saw it in the store for $6, double record set. It plays fine, and somebody loved it, played it a lot, but not one of my favorites. Here's a weird jazz record, one of the oldest jazz records that any of you will have on vinyl. MRC Records, Jazz of 2 Decades. MRC, which is the initials of Mercury Record Company, or Corp. And they basically put together a compilation. It's called Jazz of the 2 Decades. Guess which 2 decades? You got the 50s and you got the 40s and the 50s. And oddly, the 50s is side 1 and the 40s is side 2. The 50s is way cooler, but the 40s is okay. The 40s starts with a New Orleans style Dixieland, which I'm not into, but the rest of it is alright. But Jazz of the 50s, when you kick it off with Clifford Brown and Max Roach Quintet, great stuff. Errol Garner, great piano player who wrote Misty, but That was another $3 record, and the vinyl is very good. VG Plus. It sounds great. It doesn't have ticks. The label is, or I should say the sleeve is kind of trashed, split seams. It's got that nice brown coloration, discoloration, and it's got an insert catalog I won't bother you with, but if you look carefully you might recognize some of the pictures of the players. That's Count Basie and Lionel Hampton, and I guess that's Errol Gardner, who we just spoke of. And who else? Oh, definitely Art Blakey there. Can you see all these guys? So, for $3, a record that's from like 1953 or 4, for a jazz record that sounds great, 70 years old, it's a great bargain for $3. I'll say it's one of the best bargains in old jazz. I saw one of these in a free pile the other day, and I went to grab it, and I thought, let somebody else have it. This is my second copy already. My first copy is thrashed, but if you see it for free or $2 or $3, recommended. 2 records I got from a wonderful new store in Thousand Oaks. These are both electronic records. Not electronic dance music that you kids listen to, but like heavy-duty synth weirdness. Let's start with Karlheinz Stockhausen, one of the great innovators of the 20th century in all kinds of electronic music. Not really synthesizers per se, but this is a special avant-garde imprint on Deutsche Grammophon. You see how they try to be all artsy with the cover, very simple cover, instead of the usual picture of a guy standing in front of an orchestra. So Telemusik and Mixture, if I'm pronouncing that right. These are original recordings of him doing his original weird electronic compositions. So for example, Mixture for orchestra, sine wave generators, and ring modulators for small orchestra, composed in '64. Very cool piece. I don't know if you know what a ring modulator is, but it combines 2 signals and takes the sum and difference of those frequencies, turns it into something that is usually not musical. Ring modulators make stuff sound spacey, robotic-y, not consonant. It creates 2 new sounds out of 2 other sounds, and all of them sound together like, what the heck is this? It's weird. It's weird. I like weird, but I like this record a lot. Unfortunately, it's kind of a beat copy. The vinyl looks great, but it was much more poppy than I thought it would be. Got it at, did I mention Flowering Spikes out in Thousand Oaks, California? He's got pristine copies of this kind of stuff. I got the cheap copy. You know I'm the cheapest guy in the vinyl community, right? Now another very weird electronic record. George Harrison. George Harrison, I forgot the year. Is this 69? Something like that? Electronic Sounds. This is one of the first records in the UK that was made with the Moog or Moog synthesizer. Bob Moog says the correct pronunciation for the old Dutch is actually Moog. Moog. So I'm going to call it Moog because that's what I'm comfortable with. Anyway, George Harrison was one of the first people in the UK to order a Moog synthesizer, and they brought it out to him and this guy Bernie Krause, who's a pretty famous electronic music guy, and he's involved in all kinds of weird sound projects. Look him up if you don't know. Bernie Krause is, he was like the sales rep for Moog at the time, and he came out and showed George how to use the synthesizer, and that kind of is what created this record. It is all Moog synthesizer, and it is George Harrison's second solo album. It is on the Zapple label. That's Apple Records had an imprint for weird experimental avant-garde weird stuff, and it folded after only 2 records. This was the second record. So George Harrison's electronic sound. He did the cover art as a painting, which is actually pretty cool. You can see it's got the banks of synthesizers behind him, and that is supposed to be Patty. What's her name? Patty, you know, the hot model. That's her cat. He's listed in the credits as one of the Siamese twins. He got credit on side 1, which is weird because the guy who did side 2 didn't really get credit. This is the only Beatle record I can think of that only has one Beatle on it, and the Beatle only plays on one side of the record, and we're not even sure which side he played on. What are you talking about, Greg? Well, Bernie Krause brought this synthesizer out to George Harrison's house, or wherever they set it up, and he showed George how to use it, and he starts twiddling the knobs. It's okay, when you turn this knob, it does la 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 la, and when you turn this knob, it goes and whatever. Bernie Krause did not know that George Harrison had turned on the tape recorder and taped the whole demonstration session, and Bernie Krause did not know and did not give permission for George Harrison to put that demonstration on here as side 2. So it says, wait a second. Okay, it says recorded in California. So maybe this was at Harrison's house in California. Sorry. 1968 with the assistance of Bernie Krause. But it says composed by George Harrison. We don't even think George Harrison was touching any of the buttons when this was done, and it was not intended as music. Then later, without Bernie Krause, but George did his own piece of making weird sounds. So this is a strange record. It is not an essential Beatle record. It is not an essential electronic record, but I got a copy if you like electronic weirdness. This fits the bill. It is weird. Oh, there's a quote. This is the inner sleeve. I'm not going to take out the whole thing. There's a quote. It says, "There are a lot of people around making a lot of noise. And here's some more." Credited to Arthur Wax, who is not a real person. So this whole thing is kind of a tongue-in-cheek experiment in weirdness. And back then, you know, when you're rolling in money, you can turn on the tape recorder and you do anything on tape and somebody will buy it if you're a Beatle. So that's what this record is. Non-essential. I didn't realize I was getting an Italian pressing when I got this. But there you have it. 2 electronic weird records from Flowering Spikes in Thousand Oaks, California. Beautiful new store specializing in really high-end classical and jazz and a lot of rare stuff and beautiful pressings. This is not a commercial. On our trip to Southern California, well, I'm in Southern California, our trip to San Diego County, I found a store, brand new store. I'm going to shout out to 2 record stores in a row. It's called The Record Room, and it's in downtown Carlsbad, and it is brand new, and they literally were still taking records out of crates and organizing the sections when we got there. It was from Arizona, and the guy pulled up stakes and moved to Carlsbad, California, and he is like this 60-year-old punk rocker. So you go in there, he's got all kinds of punk stuff, skateboards, stickers, and he's blasting punk rock music, but he's got a pretty big selection of stuff, but a lot of it is very cheap. So this is in the $3 box, or I should say half the store is $3, but I was attracted to it because of the cover. It's a very bizarre cover. Guilty by Eric Burdon, formerly of the Animals, and Jimmy Witherspoon, blues great. Guilty. And then it's got this staunch looking English gentleman dude, maybe not English, with a bunch of prisoners in his skull, and those are real prisoners, because this was actually, at least part of this was recorded at San Quentin, with real prisoners playing music. Oh, there they are, the Ebony and Ivory twins here. Eric Burdon had left, you know, the Animals, I guess they were over. And Eric Burdon was one of the very last people to play with Jimi Hendrix. And he was really broken up by the death of Jimi Hendrix. I think he played with him the night he died or the night before he died. Really broken up by this. So this was one of the first, if not the first, project he attempted after that. And what was I going to say about it? This is not a Hendrixy influenced record per se, but it's an electric blues album. It's your fairly standard, you know, late '60s electric blues, decent singing. I bought it because the cover was so weird, and it was in the $3 bin, not $8. Where did I get this? I don't know. Oh, I got it at the $3 store again, I think. Prokofiev, Sergei Prokofiev, Symphony Number 5, Berlin Philharmonic, Albert Vakarian. It's Deutsche Grammophon, but I think it's not all the tulips. It's just a few of the tulips. Cool cover. I like Prokofiev. I like the Russians and Shostakovich and all that people, all those folks. But I'm not sure this is one of my favorite Prokofievs. But I think that is enough for one day. If you're still with us, thanks you for sticking it out for 15 or 16 minutes. Are you new to the channel? Leave a comment. Tell me how crappy all these records are. Tell me why they're not worth buying. I got good records, guys. I just happen to buy a lot of cheapo records on this last couple months' trips. And don't forget to follow, if you want to, on Instagram. I'm actually more active on Instagram than YouTube lately. It's just easier to build an audience on Instagram. And I think that's enough, guys. So thank you for watching A Pile of Crappy Records. We'll talk to you soon. Ooh.